Welcome to Decoding Superhuman. This show is a deep dive into obsessions with health, performance, and how to elevate the human experience. I explore the latest tools, science, and technology with experts in various fields of human optimization. This is your host, Boomer Anderson. Enjoy the journey. Superhumans. Well, that's a new one. Over the past couple of years, I've spent a lot of time exploring various areas of performance. We've gone down really wormholes on anything from the ketogenic diet to fasting to everything in between. And those are just the nutritional aspects. We've talked about sleep, chronobiology, and so many others. But one area that absolutely fascinates me is the idea of ancient wisdom and applying it to modern healing practices or modern performance. So my guest today is Dr. Ashley Beckman, and she is a doctor of Chinese medicine and acupuncture and a board-certified acupuncturist and herbalist based in Los Angeles. Dr. Beckman and I came to know each other through a genetics course, but we've become great friends. Every time I go to California, or have had the pleasure of going to California, we meet up in random places like Erewhon Market, where I get overcharged for an absolutely delicious smoothie. But Dr. Ashley received her doctorate and graduate degree from Yaosan University of Traditional Chinese Medicine and holds a degree in International Business and Marketing from the University of Texas. Yes, we get into that on the podcast. But what else do we get into? Because Dr. Beckman is absolutely fascinating to talk to. We, of course, go down the idea of energy medicine and looking at dantians and these things. And if you're unfamiliar with those concepts, we explain them in detail. We look at meridians, but then we transition over into epigenetics and genetics and the implications for how Dr. Beckman works with patients on a day-to-day basis. We then get into environmental toxicities, and Dr. Ashley, one of the reasons why I wanted to have her on the show was her expertise on these environmental toxicities. She has an interesting personal story to share as well. The show notes for this one are at decodingsuperhuman.com/Dr. Ashley. That's DRASHLEY. Enjoy my conversation with Dr. Ashley Beckman. Dr. Ashley, long time.
It's good to see you again.
Yeah, last time we were hanging out at Erewhon Market in Santa Monica, and you were enticing me with all these delicious goodies, which Erewhon is just such a tempting place to do those things, right?
Right, definitely.
And so while in Santa Monica, we were having this fascinating conversation, and I kind of wish I just had my podcast gear there. But since I didn't, you were so kind and generous to come back on the podcast so we can basically record that conversation. And we were talking about ancient practices or ancient wisdom going into modern practice. And one of the things I find fascinating about your background is your education and some of that ancient wisdom. Can we talk a little bit about your background, specifically as it relates to, I'm going to call it energy medicines, but you tell me what the proper term is.
Sure. So I basically was kind of always interested, even in high school, in nutrition. And I became familiar with someone named Dr. Schultz, who was a naturopathic doctor who focused a lot on toxins. And his work was based on Dr. Christopher, an herbalist. Mm-hmm. So as I got into that, I started learning a bit about detoxes and just herbs, became fascinated with that. So I went to college, ended up getting an undergrad degree in business because I always knew I would have some. But so what I did was after college, I became very interested in toxins. I read this book called Drop Dead Gorgeous that talked about toxins in skincare and beauty. So
are we talking here like skincare, beauty, meaning all of the stuff that people put on their face? I was just in Korea, so like that's skincare, beauty all over the place.
Yes. So it's, mostly all personal care products is what this book was talking about. So I had no idea, but it basically gave me this sort of, opened up my eyes to these toxins and things that we expose ourselves to all the time. And that sort of segued into learning more about some different types of things that we could use. And that led to energetic medicine. So I started to learn about homeopathy, and it just was fascinating to me. It was a really kind of not ancient, but an older practice. And that's kind of how a lot of our medicine started. And so I ended up finding a teacher who then I ended up studying with for about 5 years.
So let's talk about, I have to address the H word, right? Because look, there's books where people do call out homeopathy, bad science being one of them.
Right.
How should we think about that in the context of the broader whole, right? Because I think you've already mentioned that it's ancient practices and there's a lot of things that are based on it, but based on what I read of modern science, homeopathy gets a lot of criticism.
It definitely does. My whole theory is basically also, though, that with a lot of my clients and patients, it works. So to me, it's a very safe, effective modality to try first. And it works for certain things really well. You know, there's a lot of different ways that people use it, but I use it more kind of like on the first aid kit basis. So like for fevers, sprains, headaches, things like that. It can be used constitutionally for larger issues, but I use it more like that because for me, you try it, and then if it doesn't work, you can move on to other things that, you know, let's just say that science deems more acceptable, either like some herbs or, you know, even if they have over-the-counter medications as well. But for example, for a fever for my daughter, I always start with a homeopathic remedy. If that doesn't work, then I go to, you know, maybe essential oils and herbs. And then if that doesn't work, I have a backup of, you know, a cleaner version of an over-the-counter medication okay for kids.
Yeah, understood. So the way I should think about homeopathy is more along the lines of this is the barrier to entry is relatively low and the downside's pretty low. And so therefore, I mean, ultimately we want something that works, and you found that it works really well in certain scenarios. Is that right?
Definitely.
Okay. So I was interrupting your whole background story, and that's all right. I want to go in because I know we probably are going to call this episode Ancient Wisdom, Modern Practices. And so let's go a little bit further into that ancient wisdom.
Sure.
Where does the acupuncture come into play?
So my teacher, my homeopathic teacher, who was a classical homeopath, was also an acupuncturist. And he basically just said, you know, you need to go to school, you need to learn the science, you need to learn something that people really find more acceptable. And even though people, some people are new to Chinese medicine, it is a form of medicine that's been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, even though it might not be as well known in the States, it's gaining a lot of popularity because it's, you know, tested through time. Basically, it's an entire form of medicine you know, more in the Eastern world. They've been sort of infiltrated with Western medicine now too and use both. But at the same time, I find that those theories just really are very helpful. And I learned so much about Chinese theory and applied it to the patients that I have. And it's just really fascinating to me because they take into play things that we used to be part of even our medicine. Like they called it more eclectic medicine years ago, even in the States, when it was about herbs and eating with the seasons and, you know, just these sort of home remedies that kind of have gone away, but right now they're sort of resurfacing.
And for those listening, I know that there's some people at Cal Poly, I think, that are putting Western scientific experiments together in terms of ones that would be accepted or have like generally accepted principles. Because a lot of the studies out of China have like ends of 2 and 8 and those kind of things, from what I understand. And so they're at Cal Poly making these little bit more modern studies to prove that this stuff works because it has been around for thousands of years. And
and there is some flaw with the way a lot of the acupuncture studies are done. Because what they do, and it's called sham acupuncture. So they basically will, instead of actually inserting a needle, they will put pressure, which to us is still activating the same point. And they might put something either on a point that we use or along a channel, which a channel's kind of, we call them meridians. It's the way energy flows in the body. So to us as acupuncturists, if you're still activating something along the same channel or even along the same, on a point, you're going to get a reaction that would be similar to what a needle would do. So there's a lot of flaws with actually trying to use studies with acupuncture. So that's where there's been a lot of issues, I guess, too, with trying to prove acupuncture works or doesn't work.
Can we just define some terms? Because I'm going to ask a lot of questions about energy medicine because I'm fascinated by it.
Sure.
But defining terms here, things like meridians, can we walk through what are meridians and then maybe something about energy centers? Because I'm just trying to get all of my facts straight here.
Sure. So in Chinese medicine, we have basically these patterns of energy flow on the body, and they're called meridians. So I think of them as a highway system on the body. And they often can correlate as well the way, let's say, a nerve flows down the body. So if that makes, that helps people understand a bit. Like for someone who's ever had sciatic pain, they know that there's a sciatic nerve that kind of, the way it flows, and it goes all the way down to, the little toe. So that's kind of like the way a meridian would flow. But we have different ones that are associated with an organ name. So like we have a liver meridian, and some of these start in the actual organ where they are, or they just pass through the organ. But it's not as easy to kind of explain, but you can always, there's there's great little pictures, that have these energy pathways.
And if you have pictures that we can share with people, we can link to them in the show notes. That's for sure. And in the show notes for this one, just so everybody knows, are decodingsuperhuman.com/Dr. Ashley. That's DR instead of the full word doctor, by the way. Now let's come back to this. So meridians, thinking of them as energy centers, the way energy flows through the body. How do I look at meridians versus something like chakras? Are they same, or are they different?
So it's a similar concept, yet it's a different theory in Chinese medicine. So we also have something where a little bit more similar, where they call them dantians, where there's something. I'm
going to get to the dantians, but no. Go down your path, because dantians are something that I'm fascinated by too.
So we basically, similar to where like there's, a chakra, a third eye chakra, and then a heart chakra, and then a root chakra. Those would be correlated sort of to the dantians, but they have more chakras in that chakra system, where we kind of have the 3 dantians, or the 3 energy centers. Okay. So that would be the most similar correlation between those two. But again, it's sort of just, so another term that we use is qi, which would be the energy. And so basically kind of what I like to describe is we use needles to kind of direct the energy of the body to help resolve the issue. So I think of needles as almost like a little lightning rod to direct the energy of your body to a specific either area or organ where there's an imbalance.
So just real quick, and because I'm only going to ask this because the names escape me, but the 3 dantians, what are the names?
Well, you have, we just do, we talk about like the upper, middle, and lower. Okay. And then, so one of my favorite things though, is it's a sort of a theory or concept in Chinese medicine where we have, it's called Shen. And so that's your heart and your mind together. And so this to me is like one of the most fascinating parts of our medicine, because, the way they talk about how Chinese characters have a lot of meaning in the word, and the picture describes different things. So they have these different theories on things, and it makes total sense when you combine these, 2 concepts together. But in Western medicine, we don't really have that. So our Shen is this something that's kind of like our mental and spiritual health, but combined with your heart and your emotions. So again, that's something that we look at a lot, is if someone's Shen is balanced or disturbed or off. And because of the way we are sort of like with modern life and living, the Shen gets disturbed quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of time a Shen treatment is kind of like one of these mentally balancing treatments. But again, it's just more of, it's not just the mind and it's not just emotion, it's what they are together and that effect it has on the body.
And this is something that we have neglected as a Western society for far too long, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
And I'm glad that it's finally starting to get some attention. It needs to get a lot more attention. And I'm guilty of this as well, by the way.
And I think that's one thing that's sort of fascinating to me, or very fascinating right now in sort of the functional medicine world, is that theory, that we have basically these three centers, and it's the brain, the heart, and the gut, and they're all connected. And to me, that's the same thing of the dantians. Yeah. And it's, it's coming more full circle to where you see it in Chinese medicine, you see it in Ayurvedic medicine, and now you're finally seeing it in our, functional medicine world, but it's in science. It's rooted in science. They see that tissue from the brain in the heart and in the gut.
So let's delve a little bit into the term you used was Shen, right? Do I have that right? And so let's talk a little bit about Shen and sort of how you assess this, because, and you can take me for an example, or just any sort of patient that would walk into your door. How are you looking at Shen in an individual? How do you assess that? Is it because I've done some acupuncture and there's a lot looking at my tongue, my pulse.
Right.
How do you look at it?
So tongue and pulse are very common for just our diagnostic tools that we use on most patients. And they're not necessarily as much correlated with the Shen, but they would be correlated just with when we're trying to figure out what points to use and what's going on. So we basically use our eyes mostly, and just kind of like how the person is and appears overall for their Shen. It's kind of like someone's energy, or what's happening when, like when you walk in the door, or when the patient walks in the door, like everything you see about them. Are they disheveled? Do they look you in the eye? Are they, put together? Are they rushed and hurried and then anxious because they were in traffic? And, all of these things that can disturb you and your energy, or your demeanor. And
you're in LA, so I'm imagining everybody is coming in rushed, disheveled because they're in LA traffic, which
definitely
may beat Mumbai as sort of my least favorite place to stay in traffic. But anyways, so you've assessed the person. Now, can I just double click on the tongue, because my limited experience with this. The tongue, I understand it sells so much, but like, because I look at my tongue in the mirror and I'm like, hey, it's quasi Gene Simmons-esque. What's going on here? What are you looking for? Are there bumps or shapes, distortions? What kind of things do you see?
Sure. So one thing that I spend a lot of time with my patients on is talking about kind of sugar and the different foods that they eat that create this thing, and it's in Chinese medicine that we call dampness. Okay. So it's like, it could be some joint pain. It can be craving sugar. It can be, candida infection, fungal infection, things like that. But so on the tongue, that shows up as like a pretty thick white or yellow coat. So what we do is I generally take a look at the tongue to see the color, the shape, kind of like if it's pale, if it's kind of like on the dark or dusky side, which is a term we use. If there's little ridges on the side that look like teeth marks, if there are cracks, things like that. And we're looking kind of for these different theories of like heat and cold, dampness, dryness. And then we look to see too, like where these are happening. There's a map of the tongue that talks about different organs. And the same, it also relates to those three different areas. So like upper, middle, lower, which you can correlate to the body. All right. So we find a lot out from the tongue, but then I always have to ask, if they had coffee that morning, if they had a turmeric latte, which will make their tongue super yellow.
Especially in LA, home of the golden latte. Love it.
Exactly. So there's all these things where, you have to make sure, because most people have had a cup of coffee before they come in. So then their tongue is falsely yellow. Yeah. But same with the turmeric latte. But there are certain things that people say, they scrape their tongue. They're like, oh, I scrape it every day, but these things don't really go away. The diagnostic tool is there anyway.
Okay. And then the pulse. Are you reading for just distortions of heart? Obviously you're looking for a pulse, right? Hopefully it's there. But what are you sensing with the pulse?
Yeah. So the pulse is actually almost its own a science in itself. There are people that spend their whole almost career, mastering the pulse because it's so, the nuances are so subtle, but there are things that we can see, like if someone's pulse is fast, there might be heat, or if it's slow, there's a deficiency, but we're also feeling the nature of the pulse. So there's different organs associated with different placement of where your finger is on the pulse that we feel. We're not counting beats. It's not the traditional way. We're like really feeling for how the pulse is and all these different aspects to it. Like I said, it's its own art in itself. And so some people just really dive deep into the pulse as a diagnostic tool. I love the tongue personally, just because I think it's probably because I love nutrition, and the nutritional aspect is what you see a lot with the tongue as well. And the quality of what's happening. So the pulse is really fascinating as well. And it can tell a lot of things, but we also, we look at the whole picture of everything even.
So on the pulse, I want to just talk a little bit about something that's come up once or twice in this conversation, the concept of hot and cold. Or heat. Because, like I said, I have limited experience with acupuncture, but sometimes this term heat comes up. And in previous acupuncturists that I've worked with, back when I lived in Singapore, there was recommendations around avoiding certain types of foods, right? Things, and sometimes it was very hard for me to grasp that or take that recommendation seriously because it was like avoid coffee, which is not like, you don't tell a sleep deprived banker to avoid coffee, right? Like that's just a stupid idea. So what are we talking about? What are we referring to in hot and cold? So here's the thing with Dr. Ashley and I. When we have the chance to get together, it's usually at a seminar, a conference, or perhaps at a supermarket in the middle of Santa Monica. And when we get together, it's usually a rush. But when I'm in a rush and still need a workout, here you go. How about that for a segue? I like to use a bike called the Carol. In 8 minutes and 40 seconds, I'm able to get a kick-ass workout where my legs just feel like jelly. And why is that? Well, because it achieves rapid glycogen depletion through an AI-powered algorithm that allows you to really get personalized resistance in very little time. You get 2 20-second sprints. That's it. And you're exhausted. So if you want to try this out, in fact, you should just go and get yours. You can use the code decoding150 at carolfitai.com. It's been a really, really hot device these days. In fact, it's hard to get. But go over to Carolfit AI, plug in the code decoding150, and you'll get a nice little discount. Back to my discussion with Dr. Ashley Beckman.
Sure. So one thing I love about Chinese medicine that changed everything kind of that I thought about nutrition, because I had studied all this sort of holistic nutrition that was, juices, salads, raw food, like all the different things that were popular about 20 years ago and still a bit popular now. That you have to look at somebody's constitution in Chinese medicine. So that, for example, would be someone who's like skinny, cold, and is always eating salads and maybe low thyroid issues, things like that. They're eating the complete wrong food for them. Like they need to be eating warm foods that nourish and support them. And so bring up that cold temperature in their body up to something that's more normal.
So just real quick on constitution, what we're talking about is just sort of how a person holds themselves, how they appear to you in person. Is that right?
Yeah. And even it also takes into account some of their emotions. So some people, we look at everything in these concepts of there's elements. So like fire, earth, water, wood.
Yeah.
And you basically also, there's organs associated with that. And then there's emotions that are associated with those organs.
Mm-hmm.
So some people, you've heard of a person who might be like a hot, fiery type person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Generally, they might be, skinny, like almost with red face or red skin tones, high metabolism, things like that. They should not be eating a whole lot of just really hot, spicy foods, things like that. It just exacerbates something that they already came in with.
Mm-hmm.
So our whole point is to bring balance. And by doing that, you can utilize foods and herbs that would help bring their body back to kind of a homeostasis.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that is totally different concept than what we have in Western nutrition or just even Western medicine, where it's just, oh, you have this is the medicine you take, or everybody should eat kale. Everybody should start their morning with, a smoothie. Mm-hmm. So all of these things don't take into account anyone's constitution, or that everyone is a unique individual. Mm-hmm. So that's where I love this is where I bridge the gap between the two for me, is that I love these constitutional theories and really customizing everyone's nutrition. And then even adding that with all the functional medicine labs and practices, and even the genetics, like how we met, and basically combining those two together to create the most customized program for them. And that is really just right for their exact body. Mm-hmm.
Before we go, because I see what we're trying to do here on the bridge, and before we bridge the River Kwai, so to speak,
right?
Let's talk. I want to talk a little bit about energy centers and how to rebalance those, if I'm using the right terminology here, because this is just an area of my life that I'm very fascinated by. How do you balance dantians? How do you I want to use the word manipulate, but how do you move energy such that our body is within this balance, if that's what we're sort of looking to achieve?
So, well, you can look to see if you feel like there's a blockage. Like, let's say, for example, women who have fibroids, things like that. That is generally would be a blockage in the lower dantian. Or women who have just issues, female fertility issues, whatever it might be. So then we have either herbs that you take that bring energy, or like even bring blood flow to that area, and that unlock, we call it just either blockage or stagnation. So we use herbs, we use acupuncture. Acupuncture is amazing to direct energy to one of the centers that might be blocked.
Yeah.
And then another way that is used a lot is either Tai Chi or a medical Qigong. So those, again, like bring focus and energy when you need to fill something up, or if you need to, diffuse the stuck energy, there's different ways that you would do that. So we can use different issues that somebody might be dealing with, even if it's like anxiety. Some people feel anxiety in their chest, and some people feel it in more like in their abdominal area. So I give my patients like a targeted meditation or just a visualization when I give them acupuncture that gives them a color and then a way the energy flows using those channels and meridians that we spoke about. So I tell them what kind of color to visualize, and then where it should flow through the body, and then where it should go out. So like the end point of the needle, because a lot of the way, at least I practice and a lot of people do, is that you might put a needle near the top of a channel you're working with and then near the end. So to like draw the energy in, and then you pull it out through the body.
Okay. Hypothetically, let's say you had this person in front of you that has obvious anxiety, predominantly in the chest. I guess probably that's the middle dantian, right?
Yes, it's part of it. It's in the middle, but middle.
So middle heart chakra, whatever term we want to use here. What are herbs that we can use to kind of unblock that energy, so to speak?
Well, so one of my favorite herbs for kind of like this is like the physical heart, but a lot of times when we're treating the physical, we're treating the emotional. And the same when we're treating the emotional, we're treating the physical. So one of my favorite herbs is it's actually hawthorn berry. Okay. So can drink it as a tea.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of other effects as well, but it has an affinity for the heart.
Okay.
And the other one that's sort of, it kind of depends again on, why they have this anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a point that's a really great one called Ren 17 that you put a needle in and it just opens up that stagnation. So I love doing that if somebody was coming for acupuncture.
Mm-hmm.
But then, there's lots of different things too on the more Western side for anxiety that we could implement. But at the same time, our whole point is to look at the herbs that basically calm the Shen, because the heart is part of the Shen.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's that concept that we talked about, because anxiety, but that it's like in that heart area.
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely a mind and heart together creating an issue. So we have a whole classification of herbs that are just calm Shen herbs.
Okay.
So, and some of they have different properties, but some of even goji berries are one that are great. Chinese dates are great. And you basically just, you can either make a tea or you could have a specific formula made for you that's for calming that anxiety that you have.
Yeah. So Chinese dates, for those listening that are keto, are probably saying
so one thing that totally blew me away when I was studying all of this was that, because we use goji berries all the time, and goji berries I found out were nightshades. And I was like, mortified, because for everyone that has to do, like a very anti-inflammatory diet, and they just take out the whole group as a whole, it's like, we know all those amazing benefits of the herb as it is an herb. But at the same time, when I was in Chinese medicine school, I was gluten-free and I was kind of like avoiding certain things, and they would be in formulas, and the Chinese way is not as accepting. They're just like, oh, but it's good for you. It's like, it's actually not good for me currently.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of, modifying and things like that. But at the same point, the whole goal is, to not have to be so restrictive with all those things. If you could really heal things up properly, just take some time.
So let's go back to Bridging the River Kwai. Which is a movie I've never watched, by the way. I just like the term. And so
I've been there.
Is it Vietnam?
Thailand.
Okay. Well, I've definitely been there. I just haven't actually walked. I've definitely, and it's embarrassing because I used to advise both of those governments. So if they're listening to this, they're going to get a good laugh. Anyways, coming back to the bridging that river, you have individual protocols based on all of this energy and balancing of Shen, right?
Yes.
And then walk me through, and I think I could see the path, but how do we get into the genetic side of things, and how do they complement each other?
Sure. So I think that's one thing that is different and unique, is most people don't combine them.
Yeah.
To me, that's what's really fascinating, is I just love these concepts of Chinese medicine and how we treat the emotions and the physical care, like the physical issues that are either, correlate with the emotions or that seemingly don't. But so I love combining that wisdom with just this kind of brand new cutting edge technology that we have, where we can look at someone's whole kind of genetic makeup, see what people might have some probable issues that could come down the line. And then I'm loving all of these brand new kind of functional medicine tests that really see what's happening underneath, to see what's going on with the gut bacteria, if there's candida and fungal overgrowth, exposure to mold, all the different environmental toxins, because a lot of times patients get stuck. They don't know why they're not getting better. They've tried all these different things. For example, they're drinking a ton of celery juice because they read it on medical medium, and, are following these protocols, and it has nothing to do with their specific body. Yeah. And that's what drives me crazy, is basically people, they'll read something and take that whole theory and apply it to themselves. And it might not be the best thing for them at all. And often it's not.
Yeah, you've just described my whole problem with mass media, and, oh man, we're just going to open up a whole train of emotions. Maybe my heart will open up.
It's going to explode.
Yeah.
I get very heated talking about it, because I can't tell you how many patients come in and are telling me they're doing X, Y, Z. And I can look at them even without testing and say, that's probably horrible for your body.
Yeah. It's like and you probably, I'm hoping you don't, maybe you do it, but like the face palm, it's like you can see the face palm just when they describe something to you and you're like, that's not for everybody. Right.
And it's actually the newest thing. I mean, it's been medical medium. Now it's everyone going vegan.
Yeah.
That is like a huge discussion that I talk with my patients all the time because it's not that simple. I've had to put so many patients, I was like, go try it if you want, but I think you're going to need some help later.
Yep.
And, I was a vegan 20 years ago because I saw a PETA pamphlet, totally freaked out and, thought I was doing the best thing. And it was the worst thing for my health. And it took me a long time to rebuild after that.
I'm glad you said that. I kind of did the opposite of PETA and did competition barbecue. So I'm very sorry for all the, that was my growing up. So it was almost the opposite in some way.
But you were right in the South and I was in California.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not sure too many, there are competitions in California, but
yeah, it's not quite the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's, again, it's these things. Patients, will read something or watch a documentary that is 100% slated toward their idea, of what should be. And actually, to me, even though factory farming is a major issue, that has nothing to do with the health of, what someone should be eating in that same regard. Like, you know what I mean? Everyone should be eating grass-fed meat. And that's a totally different issue than what all the movies are talking about. Is what I would say.
Absolutely.
But I love to bridge these, like the new amazing tests that honestly we didn't have 5 years ago. So like even within how long I've been practicing, things keep changing and evolving, and we have just tools that we didn't even have. Just it just keeps evolving.
And genetics is certainly one of those tools, right? It's been only a decade or almost 2 decades now since the first genome was sequenced. Now, if I got those dates wrong, please don't curse me on the social medias. But what are some of the other tests? So you work in genetics, and that allows a degree of specificity. It's a blueprint. What are some of the other functional tests that you're using?
One of my favorites is the organic acid test.
Oh.
I just love that one.
Yeah.
I use it if someone can only do one test, that's the one I do. It's so amazing. I think you use it right or know of it well.
Yeah.
So it's basically, you can test like bacteria and fungus and some neurotransmitters and even check just what's going on with the gut and different things. And so I always, hands down, that's the first place I start.
Okay.
And then my second favorite test is one that tests for environmental toxins. Again, these are just super easy urine tests that the patient does at home. So that takes that barrier out of someone that's afraid to get a blood test and things like that. And they don't even show up on blood tests.
So on the environmental toxin side, and thank you for providing that segue because I wanted to go there with you. Which, is this a Genova test or is it somebody else?
I use Great Plains Labs.
Okay, got it. And hence the organic acids test as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so Great Plains Labs, you're getting your urine tested. What are you seeing in terms of environmental toxins? What are you testing for there specifically?
Yes, I mean, they test a handful of things, but again, it's really great to see kind of the top environmental pollutants. Like I live in LA, so they show a lot of the things that are very high would be the things that are more like from in the air from the rocket fuel and things that we're exposed to from gasoline. So like I have a long commute a few days a week, and so my levels from all the gasoline were extremely high. And the same, they said also the ones just from, because I'm near LAX sort of, that there's just all of that pollution that's just inherently in our groundwater and in the air. And it's, they also said just the West Coast is generally actually pretty high in a lot of different environmental toxins.
So I can't move to Portland and be saved from all of this.
I mean, I'm sure it's better than LA.
Yeah.
But they said they actually see a lot of this it's soaked into the groundwater just on the whole West Coast. And I would also assume that that's probably things that come in through the ocean as well, and just the way the wind patterns are from from China and Japan and things like that too. So we get a lot of that.
So you have all these toxins, and I mean, it seems like in this day and age, toxins are kind of ubiquitous, right? Like they're absolutely everywhere. And it's very hard to tell somebody in LA who may be a famous movie actor or whatever it is to just get the hell out of LA. And that may be the best solution. So what can you actually do? You haven't uprooted yourself out of LA. You've kind of figured it out. What's the magic sauce?
Well, so, I mean, what started me on this whole journey was the toxins in skincare.
Yeah.
So basically every day you have a choice of what you put on your body and in your body. You can't really control the same amount of when you're driving and the things like that in the groundwater and whatnot, minus the choices you make as well. Like if you have air filters and things like that. But I tell everyone, look at your daily habits, what you're doing, like the coffee you're drinking. There's certain coffees that are tested for mycotoxins and toxicities and things like that. So I recommend Purity and Bulletproof. I'm sure there's other brands as well, but those are the two that I tell my patients to get. Make sure if you are in LA, you do have an air purifier. But then there's a handful of skincare products and personal care products that I use. And I've created a list, which I can share with you.
Oh, please do, especially if you have anything for men, because I need to go shopping.
Okay. And so that's my biggest thing. Because I'm not going to leave LA. I mean, as far as I know, I live close to the ocean, which it seems like it's best, but at the same time, I'm definitely exposed to a lot more toxins just by living in a large city and, getting in my car and driving quite a bit. So, there's that aspect. But one thing that was very interesting to me, so that I'll share with you, is that I wasn't even going to do this environmental toxin testing because I've not touched plastic, honestly, for years. I won't buy a plastic water bottle. For 20 years, once I read that book, I changed everything. I was so crazy that I even created my own skincare line because I didn't think anything was clean enough. And it was all stored in glass because I didn't want plastic touching anything. So when I did the test, though, they asked me, they said, "What are you doing? This is one of the highest toxin levels we've ever seen."
Wow.
14 or 15 of my markers were 75% to 95%. But the part that was interesting to me was this came back to my genetics. So in the way that my genes are, I just don't process toxins well at all. So all the cleanses I'd been doing for 20 years and all of those things, I wasn't doing them the right way for my specific body. Okay. So now I'm on a totally different protocol to pull them out in a different way. But I mean, to me, that was crazy because I literally probably want to live so cleanly and they're just still recirculating in my system.
So let's talk a little bit about the specificity here. So you've looked at your several different SNPs for detoxification, and you're looking at more than just phase 1 and phase 2.
Right.
And you're seeing that you don't process environmental toxins very well. At that point, there's a temptation for a lot of people to just give up and move to the northern parts of Norway, for instance, or something like that. What can you do? Because are you just injecting yourself with glutathione, which may not be the best thing, or what can you do?
Well, so I had never taken glutathione. I had tried glutathione IVs, and they made me really sick right away. But that should have been a clue.
Yeah.
So anyway, now I utilize glutathione in a different way. I use liposomals. I still get the IVs, but I just use it at a lower dosage so that I don't get a headache instantly from all the toxins it's pulling out. And then now also, though, the way I detox is I have more of a totally different system that primes all the detox pathways first and works on all the different, basically just the different organs to make sure that those have been cleaned out more effectively before I start trying to pull things out with different products that I use. And I use totally different things now.
Okay. So are you...
The science is different now.
Yeah. I mean...
more information.
That's the caveat I always give people on this podcast. It's like our viewpoints today may change tomorrow because the science is evolving so fast.
Exactly.
But okay, now when you're working with clients, these environmental toxins, they all come back in some sort of energy reflection, right? I'm guessing. How does that look? Like somebody who's has a high toxic burden. And look, I've spent more than probably most people in their lives on airplanes. And so I know I know I have certain toxicity levels that I'm working to bring down. But how does radiation. Yeah, I'm glowing, and not from an energetic sense.
Not in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. And so how do you look at these toxins and how do they manifest themselves in terms of energy?
Well, I guess what I would say is a lot of times for people, this happens, they're kind of silent. You might not know that these are there. That's the whole thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? But you might just have this feeling that you never have enough energy, or different sort of autoimmune things are cropping up, like, some Hashimoto's, or just random joint pain that really is never resolved, or things like that, or a lot of gut health issues that might be some of the source problem. But because a lot of times the environmental toxins or heavy metals and things can really mess with these very sensitive endocrine organs, like the thyroid and things like that. So it might show up as thyroid issues. But my whole point is to really figure out the root cause of why you're having the thyroid issues or why you're having the autoimmune issues. It's never usually just, your thyroid isn't working well. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like, take it a few steps back and see, try to rule out these things. If it's bacteria, retroviruses, mold exposure, whatever it might be. Radiation is huge too. Yeah. And so checking these things out. And then now I have different products. I use a product line called Cell Core, which I really like, that helps pull out some of these toxins and glyphosate and things like that we just weren't able to do before in the same manner. So can
I go down the glyphosate wormhole real quick?
Sure.
Because
that's ubiquitous.
Yeah, it is. It's getting better here in the EU. Everybody should move to Europe. Actually, stay where you are, because if you move to Europe, I'm sure Roundup will come as well. What is the big deal? And just because I haven't covered this on the podcast before, glyphosate. Okay. Why should people be concerned?
Okay, so I can't remember the name of this movie. It was years ago that I saw it, and it was all about glyphosate. Yeah. This was, 10 or 15 years ago. And basically what it was, though, is the Roundup, the insecticide, basically has something that it will insert its insecticide into the DNA of the crop that it's used. So like a GMO, their Monsanto GMO corn, let's just say. It basically has this insecticide inserted in the DNA of the plant. So then when you consume that plant, the insecticide does what it's supposed to do. So it basically creates all of this digestive issues. That's like maybe the mildest way to put it. And its job is to, not allow any of the insecticides or any of the insects to eat this product. So if in general, and insecticides have like a neurotoxin component, they're just very problematic for the body. And so then when we're ingesting them, which you're going to do anytime you go to a Mexican restaurant and you eat corn chips, those are not going to be organic corn chips. So the thing is really now it's not, you basically need to obviously try and do your best when you're purchasing things, but when you're outside at a restaurant, chances are you're going to be eating quite a bit of food that has, insecticides that are sprayed, and they're going to be probably Roundup, of that nature. So the main thing right now that I tell my patients and clients is it's, try your best to avoid it, but it's basically impossible. You can make your choices, the best you have when you're at home. But when you're out, and people eat out so much now, it's not very common that you're eating at home 80 to 90%. So, I mean, probably not even 40 to 50%. So basically, there's some products, they have a couple products in the Cellcore line that are specific to at least help you deal with that and degrade the toxin and excrete it through the normal pathways.
So like just boosting your detoxification system in general is a good idea.
And then this is taking a specific binder to pull that out. And it's basically in the like fulvic and humic acid realm of binders, but that's too large of a group, but that's some of the science.
There's and we can definitely dive into the science at another time, but there's a number of companies, not just Cellcore, that are looking at these binders to get things like glyphosate out of the body. But I think key conclusion for people is there's more environmental toxins now than there were for our grandparents, and therefore we probably need to do more now.
Exactly. And I talk about this a lot because people don't understand, like, if it's people who are in like 50s and 60s, they're like, I just don't understand why, even for me, like why you have so many food sensitivities, why XYZ is really hard for you, like why you're sensitive to perfume. You know what I mean? Like we didn't have any of that. But at the same time, these things are catching up with them because at the same time, like 1 in 2 men get cancer, 1 in 3 women get cancer. And mostly all of these, there's a huge environmental toxin component to a lot of these different types of cancer. And I think also the invention of when they started eating TV dinners and having all this prepackaged food and that's what, our parents ate, and that was not normal. You know what I mean? Our grandparents didn't. But our parents grew up actually eating this stuff, and it's like junk in a box. It's not even food.
It's I always talk to people and say, like, if you can go back to what your great-great-grandparents used to eat, you're probably on the right path. But it's a fascinating subject. Look, we can go down so many different wormholes here. And I think just a couple of takeaways before I transition into the final questions, because a couple of the themes that you see around toxins and not controversy, I can't even say that word right now, but a couple of just areas where people can use a little clarity are around the idea of air and then water. What are sort of your top or favorite sort of air filters? And then we're going to do the same thing for water as well.
Oh, sure. So for air filters, let's see. I think people are loving Molecule. I've heard a lot of good things about it. There's, I think, Air Doctor, Air IQ, and then Rabbit Air. Those are some of the top ones.
Yeah, I think
I know there's always new ones coming out, I think, and those are there's another one I think that I just can't remember the name of.
And they're popping up on Kickstarter now, and it's just I actually purchased one off of Kickstarter, which is pretty cool. I'll reveal the name later, but Austin Air IQ Air, Molecule, all of those guys. They seem to be doing good things for the world, and it's more advanced than the HEPA filter, which is probably a whole episode to go into in itself. Water, yes. So, there's a new one that's like a tabletop one that I know people really like. Is this the Berkey? Because I have one right here. So I know people love Berkey. So that's the other one that is very popular, and I think works really well too. I'll have to look up the name because this is a pretty new one, but it's a really great one as well that can go under the counter too. Is this like the Pristine or something like that? There's a Pristine, which is reverse osmosis, but it has the remineralization. Which is, by the way, my understanding of reverse osmosis, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Ashley, it just kills everything in the water, right? And so we want to get those. Then you need to put things back. Okay, cool. Yeah, I can't remember this one. I literally just wrote it down last night. It's okay. I put you on the spot. Look, this is a fascinating conversation. Yeah. Go ahead. You were saying?
I would say, and then there's this whole new thing of all the hydrogen water.
Yeah. And there's a lot going on in that space, some of which is not exactly truthful.
I'm sure.
We can go down that wormhole at another time. Wow. This conversation has gone so fast, and I really want to pick your brain more about dantians and things. But in the interest of time, I'm going to transition into a little bit of a concluding rapid fire questions. And I'm going to go ahead and say we're going to have you back on for round 2 because we need to suss out some more dantian healing here.
I always love talking about the spiritual and emotional side of stuff.
Yeah. Too, so. And I'm getting more comfortable talking about it. So let's talk. First question. Where's your favorite place to go on vacation?
Any sort of tropical beach.
Do you have a favorite beach?
I loved Thailand because it was so, well, I went, though it was about 20 years ago, but
that's probably a good time to go.
Yeah. Is it overrun now with tourists?
No, it's not.
I tried to pick the, like the more remote small islands that people don't go to. That's always my favorite type of thing.
Oh, you and I are going to have a conversation after this.
And I love Kauai. Kauai is always a lovely place. And then, Mexico, Tulum is beautiful. Mm-hmm.
So let's go from nature to technology now. What's your favorite piece of technology that you've purchased in the past year?
Oh, totally. Hands down, my Garmin watch.
Which one?
Let's see. I just have the basic, it's sort of like girly looking. It's I think Vivo Active HR. So I'm obsessed with, tracking HRV, of course. And so I actually bought this when we were together.
Yeah.
I think at a conference.
Yeah, that's right.
I was just like, I got to get this thing. And I bought it and I love it. And I actually got one from my mom. And even my daughter has a mini version so we can track her HRV too. Beautiful.
Yeah. I have way too many devices that track my HRV. Oh, among them a Garmin. So, awesome. So next question for you is, what book has significantly impacted your life and how you show up to perform in it?
Let's see. So probably one of my favorite books most recently are kind of Joe Dispenza's books. So Break the Habit of Being Yourself. Mm-hmm. I love that one.
What's the best thing you've done for enhancing your productivity?
I would say chunking time. So like doing email at a certain time, doing social media at a certain time, working with patients, chunking time and using Asana. I'm now obsessed with
the project management software.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because I can schedule dates and times and then put things so I just don't have 150 things on my to-do list written down that I keep recycling and not getting accomplished.
Yeah. I go back and forth between that and Trello and it just depends on who you're working with really. How do you unwind?
Spend time with my daughter and go to the beach.
Beautiful. And I think that is it for our rapid fire questions. Dr. Ashley, Where can people find out more about you?
Sure. On my website, it's just www.drashley.com. Ashley is ASHLEY.
You secured that a while ago because that's a pretty good domain to have.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm on Instagram as Dr. Ashley Beckman, Facebook, Dr. Ashley Beckman.
Awesome. And we'll link to all this in the show notes at decodingsuperhuman.com/Dr. Ashley. If you guys enjoyed this show, share it with a friend. Encourage Dr. Ashley to come on for round 2. I want her back and she wants to hear from you as well. And be sure to go over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. Dr. Ashley, thank you. This has been an absolute blast.
Oh, thank you so much. Always fun to hang out and chat with you about the things we love.
Yep. And I'm going to be in California soon. I'll talk to you about that very shortly. So we'll catch up there in person, probably for another Erewhon Market chat.
Definitely.
Awesome.
We can eat our favorite snacks.
Absolutely. To all the superhumans listening, have an absolutely epic day.
All right, superhumans. Do you want Dr. Ashley for a round 2? If so, head on over to the Gram, the Facebook, the Twitters, whatever is your most favorite social media network of the moment, preferably LinkedIn, and, say hello. But also tell me what you thought about the episode. Let me know what you think about Dr. Ashley's episode in general, and I would love to have her back on for round 2. But that choice is really yours. The show notes for this one, again, are at decodingsuperhuman.com/Dr. Ashley. That's DRASHLEY. And please head on over to iTunes if you enjoyed the episode. Leave us a 5-star rating with a great comment, and I'll give you a shout out on the next show, or maybe a future show. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. And remember, choose health.